Putin and Lukashenko have tried every means possible for years to turn the Polish border into a chaos laboratory. Refugee waves, smuggling bubbles, drone harassment. This wave of chaos was a dirty tactic that spread from Warsaw to Berlin and then to Brussels. However, Moscow and Minsk's great hybrid war strategy collapsed in a dark underground tunnel. On the morning of December 11th, Polish border guards discovered that more than 180 foreigners had crossed the Poland-Belarus border illegally. The migrants had entered Polish territory through an underground tunnel dug under a dam near Narewka. It was an unexpected move. It seemed ingenious. However, when we examine the technical anatomy of the infiltration, what emerges is a desperate tactic rather than military genius. It all began in the Podlaski voivodeship in eastern Poland, near the Narewka border post. The latest move by Russian and Belarusian intelligence services was crammed into an underground hole just 1.5 meters high. More than 180 people, mostly Afghans and Pakistanis, were attempted to be smuggled into Polish territory through this tunnel. The region, with its dense forest and marshy terrain, has historically provided natural cover for smugglers and infiltration attempts. However, in 2025, this geographical advantage turned into a death trap for Russia due to the integrated electronic systems established by Poland. The operation's collapse began with the success of Poland's high-tech electronic barrier system installed along the border. Realizing that the physical wall above ground was impenetrable, hybrid warfare planners attempted to go underground. But what they didn't count on was that Poland's border security doctrine included not only visual detection, but also seismic and electronic detection. The integrated electronic systems instantly detected movement underground. The scene at the tunnel exit was pure panic. The first groups to emerge from the underground tunnel were already surrounded by Polish border guards, police teams, and tracking dogs. Over 130 people were immediately detained at the tunnel exit. This meant that the infiltration attempt's chance of remaining secret was wiped out in the very first minute. In fact, it wasn't just a tunnel that collapsed, but the Kremlin's entire game plan on the ground. Lukashenko and Putin's plan had hit a similar wall at the Lithuanian border. In January 2025, the Lithuanian State Border Guard Service uncovered another 25-meter tunnel dug for similar purposes near the village of Pashalchis. This situation confirms that underground infiltration is not an isolated occurrence, but rather a systematic strategy of desperation. And the outcome was the same on both fronts. Technology crushed primitive tunnel tactics. This 100-meter tunnel is actually only the visible and weakest part of the iceberg. The collapse in Narewka was creating a much larger, continental-scale domino effect, stretching from Warsaw to Berlin and then to Brussels. Looking at the figures and statistics, we can see more clearly the scale of the threat we are facing and why Poland reacted so harshly. According to data compiled by Charter 97 and the Lansing Institute, the number of illegal crossing attempts stopped at the borders of Poland, Lithuania, and Latvia over the past 4 years has reached 200,000. And nearly 150,000 of these cases occurred at the Polish border. This is a massive human mass, equivalent to the population of a medium-sized European city. What happened at the Polish border was not a random influx of migrants. It was a coordinated hybrid action planned by Russia and implemented on the ground by the Belarusian KGB. Vladimir Putin and Alexander Lukashenko aimed to paralyze NATO's eastern flank, wear down security forces, polarize societies, and plunge the EU into political chaos by using this crowd of 200,000 people as a biological weapon or human bullet. However, this strategy backfired with Poland's latest move and turned into a self-inflicted boomerang for Russia. The most critical, and for Russia, most devastating aspect of the ripple effect is Poland's masterful diplomatic judo tactic in managing this crisis. Putin's goal was to weaken Poland and create internal turmoil, but Warsaw caught this threat in mid-air and used it as the perfect pretext, casus belli, to set a massive legal trap that would economically strangle Russia. The Polish government invoked the national security provisions of the European Union's Schengen Borders Code by bringing tunnel discoveries, increased aggression, and border violations to the table. The result? Poland decided to extend its border controls and strict inspection regime with Germany and Lithuania until April 2026. This decision is not a simple procedure involving passport control. It means choking off all land trade, logistics flows, and human mobility from Russia and Belarus to Europe. The measures, touted as temporary, have become permanent, and an insurmountable wall thanks to Putin's relentless aggression. The mechanism of this legal trap is having devastating consequences for the Russian economy, which is already struggling with sanctions. The tightening of border controls and the effective locking of customs has led to kilometer-long truck queues, disrupted supply chains, and completely blocked the vital parallel import channels Russia uses to circumvent sanctions and transfer technology. While trying to smuggle a handful of people through tunnels, they lost billions of dollars in commercial traffic on highways. This is strategic blindness at its finest. Poland, citing border security, has also blocked Russia's last lifelines to Europe and shut off the valve. This situation, as analysts at the Lansing Institute note in their reports, is a coordinated state response of unprecedented severity to a coordinated hybrid action. While Putin expected to create cracks within the EU and pit countries against each other, he found a united and rock-solid front, with Germany, Poland, and Lithuania standing shoulder to shoulder and sealing the borders. The closure of the border trapped not only migrants, but also Russia's logistical future. Moreover, this event marked a turning point in Polish domestic politics. Putin's social engineering failed once again. Putin's calculation was that the migrant crisis would divide Polish society and weaken the government through human rights debates. However, as seen in Al Jazeera's analyses and on-the-ground observations, it had the opposite effect. The Polish people began to voice stronger, louder support for the government's tough security policies in response to Belarus's hostile stance and border violations. The anger over "we are not the scapegoats" strengthened Poland's defensive reflexes and created a sense of national unity. When the tunnel footage aired on television, no one asked, "Why are we closing the borders?" Everyone began to say in unison, "Why aren't we closing them more tightly?" Moscow's psychological warfare operation turned into a stone that sharpened Poland's national consciousness. This social consolidation gave Warsaw unlimited political credit to make more aggressive, uncompromising, and daring moves against Russia. The tunnel was dug to test Poland's resolve, but that hole became the grave of Russia's influence in Europe. This ripple effect will not be limited to Poland. Poland's success in electronic barrier and seismic sensor technology is setting a new standard across the entire Eastern European line, from Finland to Romania. Old-style concrete walls are being replaced by smart walls that detect every movement. This situation is wiping out Russia's hybrid infiltration capabilities not only in Poland, but across the entire NATO eastern flank. Now every border marker, every tree, and every patch of land has become an eye watching Russia. The tunnel incident was the final warning needed to modernize Europe's security architecture, and that warning has been heeded. Now the walls are higher, the sensors more sensitive, and Europe's gates are locked tighter than ever against Russia. If the tunnel incident in Narewka was the cold and insidious face of hybrid warfare, the latest moves from Poland and Germany are the most concrete evidence of how close things are to hot and kinetic warfare. While seismic sensors hunt moles in the field, a much more frightening, much more serious scenario is being discussed at the diplomatic table and in military headquarters. Poland is no longer just waiting defensively, it is elevating its doctrine of preemptive strike and deterrence to the level of active threat. The clearest, most shocking expression of this strategic shift and challenge came on December 11th from General Jarosław Gromadzinski, former commander of the old European Army Corps. Setting aside diplomatic courtesy and indirect language, the general directly targeted Russia's heart in the Baltic, its most strategic military base, Kaliningrad, and uttered a phrase that will go down in military history. "We will burn everything within 300 kilometers and set fire to everything within 900 kilometers." This is not an ordinary military statement or an empty threat. It is an ultimatum delivered to Moscow with specific coordinates. The timing of the general's statement is no coincidence. Gromadzinski's words take on their true meaning when read in parallel with the tunnel crisis and increasing border violations. In response to Russia's attempts to seep in from below and harass, Poland has firmly put its capacity to strike from above and destroy on the table. The tunnel incident gave Warsaw the opportunity to articulate its deterrence doctrine in the strongest terms and to speak to Russia in a language it understands. The general clearly and unapologetically stated that, in the event of a possible attack or escalation, the Polish army reserves the right to enter Kaliningrad, put the region under fire, and eliminate the threat at its source. This is the clearest signal of a shift from NATO's traditional passive defense doctrine to a preemptive and destructive strike capability. Kaliningrad was Russia's unsinkable aircraft carrier in the Baltic Sea and a dagger plunged into the heart of Europe. However, with Poland's acquisition of new HIMARS systems, long-range missile batteries, and the general's clear threat, it has been transformed from a force element into a defenseless hostage. Russia, already dealing with tunnels and refugees, now faces the risk of its own territory, its most valuable military asset, being devastated. The general's statement that "we will burn it" is not rhetorical hyperbole, but a reflection of Poland's modernized, formidable firepower. The Russian military presence in Kaliningrad is now not only isolated, but also trapped in a potential ring of fire. The second, and perhaps most unexpected move in the strategic chess game, came from Germany. Germany, Europe's sleeping giant that has been reticent on military matters, is undergoing a radical, historic change in its defense policy under new Chancellor Friedrich Merz. Immediately after the tunnel crisis, the German government announced that it would provide direct, practical military support to Poland's ambitious Eastern Shield operation. German soldiers will be deployed to the Polish border starting in April to construct trench systems, lay barbed wire, and set up tank barriers. For the first time since World War II, German and Polish soldiers are digging the same trenches and standing shoulder to shoulder on the same front against a common enemy. This image is Putin's worst nightmare. A united, armed Europe that has put the past behind it and taken up arms. Merz's approach, the decades-long era of American peace is over, we must now defend our own interests, is a declaration that Germany will no longer remain passive in the face of the Russian threat, but will be an active player on the field. These moves are turning the Polish-German border into an impenetrable steel line for Russia. Deep trenches against tunnels, impenetrable tank barriers against hybrid infiltrations. NATO's eastern flank is no longer just an alliance on paper, but a physically reinforced, concrete and steel-reinforced, attack-ready fortress. Poland's capacity to isolate Kaliningrad, combined with Germany's massive logistical and military support, halts Russia's room for maneuver in the Baltic. While Putin hoped to weaken Poland with tunnels and migrants and divide NATO, he found himself facing a determined alliance, armed to the teeth and threatening to set Kaliningrad ablaze. Russia's strategic depth evaporates in the face of Poland's determination. The equation has now completely changed. Russia's grey zone tactics, tunnels, and migrant weapon are ineffective and feeble in the face of Poland and Germany's black and white military preparations. Trenches are being dug, missiles are being locked onto Kaliningrad, and Europe is beginning to speak the only language Russia understands: brute force. With General Gromodzinski's threat hanging in the air, it's not hard to imagine Moscow's generals looking at their maps and realizing with horror how defenseless Kaliningrad has become, how it has been trapped. Every trench dug at the border is another nail in the Kremlin's coffin. That miserable, muddy 100-meter tunnel is where Russia's European dreams ended. Putin and Lukashenko's hybrid war shattered against Poland's technological wall, seismic sensors, and unshakable will. Refugee and agent routes have been closed both above and below ground. Tunnels have been sealed, trenches dug, and Kaliningrad has become a hostage, trembling in the shadow of Polish missiles. And Europe's eastern gate slammed shut with a loud bang, never to open again to Russia's face. The message to the Kremlin is clear: you will eventually fall into every well you dig. So, what are your thoughts on this matter? Please share your thoughts in the comments. To stay updated on new videos, please subscribe to our channel and don't forget to turn on notifications. Thank you for choosing us.